Okay, so in Module 3 this week, we've been talking about how companies get value from IT. We've talked about the need for strategic alignment. And so with this PowerPoint voiceover, we're going to talk about IT governance. So what in the world is IT governance? What does it matter to organizations? So let's go ahead and jump into the topic here. I'd start by saying that managers and organizations are tasked with making major decisions regarding technology, the acquisition and deployment of various technologies and systems. So here are some of the major types of decisions that are typically made. And as you can imagine, poor decisions can be costly. You may have been involved in some of these types of decisions yourselves. You may have been involved in some good and some bad types of projects. But certainly, I think a key question there, or key issues in today's complex organizations with multiple business units or functional areas, who needs to be making key decisions about technology? Where should these decisions be made? Should they be allowed to be made at the local business unit level or functional area, or should they be made at more of a global or enterprise level? And so this picture, this illustration really helps to drive home this question. So you have IT projects and IT-enabled business solutions within organizations. So, within today's complex organizations, you may have local business units. Let's say they may have their own specific business objectives and also technology objectives. So what they need for their specific business unit and functional area. At the same time, let's say at corporate headquarters, or you have a global or corporate CIO level, he or she may have they have certain business objectives and also certain objectives that they consider important at the enterprise level. So so the point is that sometimes when you start talking about how you make decisions about major technology decisions within an organization, there can oftentimes be a tension between what I'd call global versus local requirements. So how do you reconcile that tension? So if in a situation like this, let's say that you have a focus on local requirements. In other words, you're saying, okay, we're going to let different business units make their own decisions about technology. That's really a posture of a decentralized mode of IT governance. So it's really you're pushing decision making out to individual business units or functional areas, and so they can make their own localized decisions with respect to IT. So, what do you get from that? Well, the advantage is, local units, they feel they have a sense of ownership with what they're doing with IT. They get buy-in, and so the local needs are being met, so to speak. However, as you can imagine, the disadvantage of this is you let's say you're in a large healthcare setting, and you have different functional areas or units within a hospital. Yeah, they each get what they need from the standpoint of technology, but there's really no one overseeing the enterprise view. And so what you can end up with is fragmented information systems that aren't integrated. So you end up with silos, lack of standardization, which creates higher costs and complexity in managing IT infrastructure. You could have let's say four different standards for mobile devices. You could end up with an inflexible IT infrastructure that can constrain your ability to adapt to changing business needs. Not to mention internal conflict over business unit IT priorities. So that's focusing on what I'd call the decentralized model or posture of IT governance. Is pushing decision making out to the local units. Now, you could go to the other extreme and say, look, we're not going to give local units really much say in IT decision making. We're going to push that. That's all going to be made at a corporate IT or enterprise level. So we're going to dictate standards. We're going to force standards, and local units or functional areas really don't have much say in decision making. So what does that approach to governance get you? Well, the advantage is it enhances enterprise integration. So it's more likely you're going to have, let's say, good solid data standards, in the interoperability or integration among systems, security standards. You're going to have, again, more standardization of technology. So you get efficiencies of cost and probably a better defined or structured IT infrastructure. So there's certainly advantages to this. The downside is this may come at the expense of meeting local requirements and stifling their innovation. And so, I worked in this environment where we really had a centralized mode of IT governance. And so, we tightly controlled everything. We had strict standards. We maintained costs. But at the same time, local business units, in my case, these were VPs of business units, oftentimes were not too happy and didn't feel that their needs were being addressed. So, again, the challenge is how can organizations ensure that they make the right IT-related decisions that meet both local and global enterprise business and technology objectives. One answer to this, really a third mode of IT governance, is what's called the federal model of IT governance, and so that's shared decision making. It's real simple. It's where it makes a lot of sense. It's where, let's say, your corporate IT would retain certain decision-making rights or autonomy over key areas related to infrastructure platforms, security, enterprise systems, data management, those types of things. I mean, you certainly don't want different business units setting different standards for, let's say, virus protection software or firewalls or network infrastructure. These are things that need to be tightly controlled at a corporate level by the corporate level CIO and his or her department. So that's shared decision making. At the same time, with the federal model, you would empower business units to make certain decisions. And maybe they would be given a budget or some type of autonomy in selecting let's say business software that was specific to their unit. Maybe they'd be given the ability to select different mobile devices or desktop platforms from an approved vendor list. So they'd be given some flexibility. However, they would need to work with IT, particularly in buying software that would need to be integrated with the other systems. So to summarize here, when we talk about IT governance, we're really talking about decision making. And so what we first have really the first conclusion here is that there are three basic tendencies that companies follow with respect to, where do they allow decision making to occur regarding IT. And so there's hey, let's centralize it. That has pros and cons. Let's decentralize it, or let's share decision making. And so I'm not going to go through this, but this is a table that really describes each mode of governance, the pros, the cons, and then I've tried to provide some examples of each. So, certainly if the organization you work for just has let's say your IT infrastructure is generally kind of a mess, for lack of a better word, silos, lots of off-standard technologies, bloated in costs, complexity, and so forth, it's very likely that you're allowing too much decentralized decision making, and you're going to have to rein things in, which may not be an easy thing to do. All right, so we've looked at general IT governance tendencies. Let's look at IT governance from more at a micro level. So what is it and how does it work? So think of IT governance, it really it provides a framework for guiding information systems decisions. And so it's not really the decisions you're making, it's how you go about decisions. So you're defining how you're gonna make decisions with an organization. If that, I'm probably being redundant here, but so how do you go about making decisions? So in practice, IT governance, think of it as consisting of three key elements. You have roles, processes, and structures, and we'll look at an example here in a second. So a role would be decision-making rights. So, who's making, let's say we're talking about IT funding decisions. So who makes the decision, who has input to the decision, who's held accountable. Those are roles. Processes. So who in your company, or let me back up a second here. So you got roles, who makes the decision, input, and so forth, but then processes. So processes would be rules, guidelines, procedures that guide actors in the decision making. So when you're looking at IT funding decisions, you may have to follow there may be a defined process you follow in making those decisions. And then third, there's structures. So organizational arrangement of actors, so like a steering committee. So typically, when you have IT governance in place, you have these three elements: roles, processes, and structures. So think of IT governance consisting of an arrangement of actors operating within an organizational structure, each with defined decision-making roles who follow a defined decision-making process. So let's look at an example here. So if you have trouble reading this, you can pull up the slides and maybe expand the view a little bit. But this is a simple flow chart. It's an example of IT governance for project funding decisions, IT project funding decisions. So as you can see here, there's for an IT project being proposed, you have a business sponsor, and so this flow chart defines a process that this business sponsor, this stakeholder, has to follow in trying to get a project funded: identifying a business need, reviewing it with IT, preparing the concept, submitting it to the IT steering committee. IT steering committee, they have a process. They have to assess alignment. Does this project align with the strategic goals? Do they approve of it in concept? If yes, is more information required? If no, okay, they're going to go ahead and approve it. If yes, they're going to request a business case from the applicant. And so you can see here there's a process that's followed. So this is maybe not a good example, but I think it helps to illustrate. So this is IT governance for a specific type of decision, IT funding decision. But there are roles here. There are different actors that have different roles, decision-making rights that follow a process. And there's also there's a structure. There's a committee. And so this is an example of IT governance. Now, what does this do for an organization? So when you impose governance like this for, let's say, funding IT projects, what does it bring to the table? Because you are creating a lot of work for people. You're requiring them to follow a process to get a project approved. Maybe it's any project over $50,000. And so I think some of the main benefits of doing this governance, it brings discipline and objectivity to IT decision making. So, and then secondly, and I think this is critical, it forces organizations to think at the enterprise level in order to avoid the silo mentality. So you have a steering committee that it's vetting every major project request, and they're going to specifically assess this project that's been, the package has been put together by the project sponsor, and so that the committee is going to vet this project to see, does this align with our business goals? So it really governance forces organizations to think at the enterprise level to avoid organically letting their information technologies develop into silos. And finally, I'd add that research has proven out that effective IT governance does lead to superior returns on IT investments. So to summarize, think of IT governance as really how you go about making decisions about technology within an organization. There are three main governance postures we talked about: centralized, decentralized, the federal model. But it's very core. IT governance, when you set up effective IT governance mechanisms, you're setting up structures, roles, and processes to make certain types of IT decisions. And so if the organization you work for is characterized by, let's say, undisciplined IT decision making and lots of bad decisions about technology that are leading to further problems, It's one reason for that is might be that you just don't have effective IT governance, and so this is something that could be easily worked on, improved upon to develop IT governance mechanisms to improve your organizational decision making.